Welcome back to the final part of Front Row. Our guest, Professor Omwa Nzala, is the Chief Virologist at the University of Nairobi, and Professor Matilu Mwao, Deputy Director at KEMRI, are still with me. Professor Nzala, I'll come to you. I want us to talk about this thing called herd immunity. We have had it over the 2 years, but just for the sake of this conversation, maybe you could describe what exactly is herd immunity, and as a country, are we close to achieving it?
Yeah, herd immunity is actually the public health phenomenon. And it's a public health phenomenon in the sense that when over 70 or 80% of us in a given locality are actually immune to a particular infection, then we talk of herd immunity. So if we begin at individual level, where all of us, as many of us as possible, get vaccinated, and then we look at a population level, what percentage of us are actually immune to the infection. And that's what we normally refer to as herd immunity. So it is not at individual level. At individual level, you must be immune, but we look at it from the population level. And usually for a lot of viral infections, you need to have over 80%, sometimes over 90% of a population completely immune. And that immune, it really comes from vaccination. That immunity comes from vaccination. So as we speak now, we cannot really talk of herd immunity because we haven't reached there. We are only talking of maybe 6% of us who are vaccinated. So it's a question at how many of us, so that it means this way, that out of every 10, let's say there's one person who is not immune. When an infection comes in, the chances of getting that one is actually markedly reduced. And even if it gets that one person, if the infection tries to move to the next person and the next person, it will actually find that all those people are immune, and then that one person who got infected is a dead end. That's exactly what we refer to as herd immunity. And that's why you saw that when countries in Europe and North America got vaccine, they had a race, and the race was to get as many of them vaccinated as much as possible. And you have actually seen them, it was 18 years and above, they have gone to 12 years and above, and now some countries are actually introducing 5 years and above. And the whole issue is to ensure that over 90% of the population is vaccinated. And through that, then you achieve herd immunity.
Professor Mwao, coming to you from that description, I read somewhere that we cannot achieve herd immunity unless we vaccinate our young ones. Is that the case?
Let me tell you something. First of all, we require very high percentages of immunized people for us to get herd immunity. We do not have that. In fact, for the whole world, only about, 42% of everybody is vaccinated in the whole world. For Kenya, that's like 5.5%. And Kenya, being a powerful economy in Africa, is better than other countries where it's probably even 1%, okay? So that's number one. We don't have the percentages required. Number two, for coronavirus, unlike for other viruses, people who are vaccinated can get infected again. So that means that the virus can pass through, even though they will not get so sick or die, but can pass through. So achieving herd immunity for coronavirus is complicated by that fact. In other diseases, the risk of getting infected when you're vaccinated is much smaller than this one for coronavirus. So we are grappling with this concept of herd immunity in corona with some difficulty. But we are very clear in our minds that you must vaccinate a very large percentage, and that percentage includes even children.
Most people, most Kenyans, Professor Nzala, coming to you, most Kenyans are not comfortable with the issue of vaccinating their young ones, vaccinating teenagers. As a virologist, what advice would you give towards this?
You see, for me, I want to understand, first of all, what is a fear and what is a skepticism. We have very robust program in this country of us vaccinating under 5s. As soon as you are born, you are being given BCG, you are being given polio, you are being given pentavalent, and we vaccinate children all the way so that when they are, by the time they are 2 years, they have received multiple immunogens that we actually want to prevent. And let this opportunity to inform vaccines in this theme beyond childhood. That there are vaccines for adolescents, there are vaccines for adults, there are vaccines for the elderly, and there are vaccines for special groups. We were not really talking about this, but COVID has actually now exposed that aspect that we must actually begin to do this. For example, 11 to 13-year-olds in this country, girls who are 11 to 13-year-olds in this country must have a HPV vaccine. And we know that HPV vaccine has been designed to prevent cervical cancer. I've just told you that now countries have now gone from 18 down to 12. Some countries have even gone to 5. To do that tells you one thing, that they have actually done studies, and these vaccines are now found to be safe, and these vaccines are also been found to be effective in that age group. And just to echo what Prof. Mao actually also said, that really to achieve any level of herd immunity, really we need to vaccinate nearly all of us. So what we want to hear is for that individual who is saying that you don't want your child to be vaccinated, what is the problem? So that we can address it head on. Because there are vaccines designed for this all these age groups. And it's maybe a discussion we should have in the next, if you are interested, to just unpack and say, what do we need to talk about adult vaccination program beyond childhood? Over to you.
So just to get you clear, you are telling us that, for example, those aged 5 have their own vaccination, then we have teenagers, we have their own vaccination, and then we have the adults and then the elderly, each have their own vaccination?
Yes, there are vaccines recommended for different age groups. And they are recommended because vaccines you are given, let's say, under 5. By the time you are 40, 45, the immunity for those vaccines has gone down and you need to be vaccinated again. I'll give you an example. Anyone in this country who is 65 years and above should actually go for a pneumococcal vaccine. Because we know that at that age group, you are again exposed to a lot of respiratory infection, one of them being pneumococcal infection. So we recommend a pneumococcal vaccine for that age group, because we are beginning to see that we are living longer. And as we live longer, immunity wanes. The vaccines you are given when you are children need to be repeated. Number 2, the other aspect of it is influenza. We know very well the elderly and those with comorbidities suffer when they get influenza. Again, we are recommending that for this kind of age group, then a yearly influenza vaccine is actually recommended. That is a discussion we must be having. And then for the adults, anytime young children are getting into an environment where they'll be crowding, like going into secondary school where there's boarding and they'll be crowding, as we know our country, then we recommend a meningococcal vaccine, because we know exactly what happens. So there is this discussion we must begin to have now about what vaccines are recommended for the adolescent, what vaccines are recommended for adults, what vaccines are recommended for the elderly and for special groups. And for special groups, we mean pregnant women, for example, lactating mothers, for example, those with comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, and those with cancer. What kind of vaccines are recommended for that group? And that is now the beginning of a program we want to be able to put in place beyond childhood. And we sometimes use the word filling the gap, because that is a gap that has existed. And now COVID has actually told us that we need to begin to discuss these aspects of vaccination beyond childhood. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Nzala, for that. Professor Mwau, I'll let you have the last word as we prepare ourselves as a country to fight this Omicron variant. It's already in Uganda. 9 cases were confirmed today. What is your last parting shot, actually, to the audiences and the Kenyans and even the rest of the world watching us right now?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. The people of Kenya already know, even those ones who first began to watch news and watch TV and enter social media last year, that science is a force for good. In fact, many people right now attribute their staying alive to the science that has been conducted over many years, even before they were born. Science is a force for good. And all that people need to do at this moment is to soften their hearts and accept that science should trump over fear, over racism, for instance, or bigotry or discrimination, as you saw, those people are locking their countries down. And science should be able to trump any of these worries and so on. The evidence that vaccination is good for children in coronavirus, is good for pregnant women, is good for special groups, is very, very strong. And therefore, people should just let science be a force for good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I was very blessed to have 2 professors with me, Professor Omicron Nzala, who is the Chief Virologist at the University of Nairobi, and Professor Matilu Mwau, the Deputy Director at KEMRI. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this discussion. That's how we wrap up this edition of Front Row. I'm Ashley Mazuri. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.